Okay, welcome. Our agenda for today is as follows. We're going to do our community check-in, and then we're going to talk about some agency updates, some legislative updates. We're going to talk about our associate licensing renewal and extension process, and then we'd like to collect some information on the highs and lows of Apple. We hope to present a report to the board in probably next month, and we wanted to present some additional information besides just the numbers so that the board would have a more complete picture of how things are going in Apple. So we're going to be asking for some feedback for that. So let's start with our community check-in. January tends to be kind of a high stress month. I'm sure it doesn't have anything to do with the legislative session, but it's the middle of winter and it's dark. Anyway, so in our breakouts today, I'd like you guys to share your best stress management technique. What do you do to manage your stress when you're feeling things are piling up and you just got to take a break? So what's your favorite stress management activity? I'm going to put you in breakout group these meetings. So if you are not able to attend, you can always watch the recording later. So then maybe what we'll do is we'll just, when we get closer, we'll look and see what is on the agenda. And if it can wait, then we'll just cancel the meeting. If not, we'll do a quick one and we'll record it so you can watch it later. Does that work for everybody? Hopefully. If not, let me know and we'll try and make some adjustments. Our meeting in March is going to be our conference. So we won't have a regularly scheduled meeting in March. And then we'll probably have one in April and May. As of right now, I'm thinking we won't have one in June, but we'll see how it goes. We may have new competencies to discuss in June. So we'll keep our fingers crossed for that. Okay, so speaking of our conference, we do have a new website and an RSVP page. So we will send this out by email today for those that aren't here, but this is our new meeting page. So there's a schedule of events. And for those of you that have volunteered to present at the conference, we'll also send you a reminder email of when your session is. Some of you have agreed to present, but maybe not be aware that you're presenting with other people. So we'll also send an email about that. We had talked about doing like some roundtable sessions, and I know those work best if we have facilitators, and I don't think we're going to have facilitators. So you just kind of forget the roundtable part of it. The roundtables tend to be more discussion based. So if you can build some discussion time into your presentation, that would be wonderful. But we'd like those sessions to be more collaborative and give people an opportunity to share and ask questions based after you do your presentation. So we'll send that information out. If you have any scheduling conflicts, please let us know and we'll try and make some adjustments. And the venue here, we're working out. We'll provide some details exactly where the rooms are. And I know that parking sometimes can be a challenge, so I'm going to try and provide some information on parking here as well. Any questions about, and the most important part, let's go back to the home page, is that we do need, if you're planning to participate, we do need you to RSVP. And we're going to be asking some questions about, do you need reimbursement for mileage? Do you need hotel rooms? Do you need substitutes for your classes? Are you willing to pay for food? So we're going to need all those numbers finalized within the next couple weeks. So if you can let us know what your plans are, that'll help us to budget and get that stuff ordered for you. So any questions on the conference? Don't think I'm seeing, will you put the website in the chat? Yes, thank you, Camilla. Thanks for doing that. And then we'll send the website out. We'll try and get it on our website, our web page as well. We just finalized it last night. So Okay, I don't see any other questions about that. So we'll go to our next thing. There's a lot of windows open here, and it's making it difficult to get back to where I need to be. Okay, I think we're here. Can you guys see the slides? Travis, thank you for that. I love it. Last night is still on time in my book. Me too. Andrew, would you like to speak about this one?
Yeah, I'd love to. So we're super excited to announce that we have created some micro credentials that could be taken in lieu of pedagogy coursework. We still have a lot more we would like to create, and we would love to have help testing and creating them. Lisa, do you mind clicking on that link real quick? And then, so instead of creating a micro credential that would, like one micro credential that would meet one university course, we're creating micro credentials that meet the competencies in board rule, which you can see here are separated by course. So it would be, maybe 3 or 4 micro credentials could excuse one course. So we love to have help. USBE can compensate. So if you're interested in creating a micro credential, or maybe you and a partner or a team of people would like to do that, everyone can get compensated for doing that. But if you could reach out to myself, that would be great, and I can get you information on that. And I know some of you have reached out, and we did have a meeting scheduled, and we're just going to try to reschedule that, I think, to next week. So I don't know if you've heard from Lorraine about that or not, but we'll make sure to try to get that scheduled by the end of the week. And if you can't make it to that meeting, that's totally fine. We can just meet one-on-one, and I can show you how the compensation works and which micro credential competencies we still need to create micro credentials for. So yeah, we'll just reach out if that's something you think you'd be interested in doing. We'd love to have some help.
Great, thanks. I don't see any questions in the chat. Are there any questions about micro credentials? Question back for the APPEL conference. Will breakout sessions not be repeated? We didn't schedule repeats at this time. If you want to repeat your session, we could schedule that at a different time.
It wasn't about repeating like my session. It was like I'm excited to hear from the state content specialists about their endorsement forms and competencies and things. And I see that those are only being brought in once. So if I go to that, I miss out on other opportunities, and was hoping that those might be offered more than once, so that if you missed it the first time, you could catch it the second time.
Okay, we could definitely look into that. We have 3 breakout rooms available, so we could do up to 3 sessions per hour. So if we don't already have 3 sessions scheduled, we could look at scheduling a repeat at one of those times. So we'll look into that. Any other?
Yes, I did have a question about the micro credentials, and maybe you did answer it, but will there be any micro credentials coming up for like the methods courses, or is it only going to be just the pedagogy? Because that's what a lot of my teachers are missing, is the methods courses.
Oh,
Go ahead.
well, so Crystal, are you thinking the elementary methods courses? Or are you thinking like secondary?
Yeah, the elementary.
I think right now our focus is to start with the pedagogy, just because everybody needs that, regardless of license area. I don't know, Lisa, you might know, as far as the elementary literacy and math methods, if there's a plan down the road to.
Yeah, there's definitely a plan. We're hoping to. We're working on the generals first, and the elementary ones are a little bit more complicated, just because we're wanting to develop those based on the new competencies that haven't been finalized yet. So when we get those new competencies finalized, we'll build the micro credentials based on that. We are getting new general competencies, but in our discussion on what those new competencies look like, we imagine they're still going to need to demonstrate classroom management. They're still going to need to demonstrate the quality instructional cycle. And those are the micro-credentials that we're developing first. Mariah Griffin says that Salt Lake Community College has math, ELA, social studies, and science elementary methods courses. And Sean is asking why are competencies changing? Because some of our competencies that are currently in board rule are unclear about how to measure them. And there's also been, we would like the competencies to align better to the new effective teaching standards. So it's mostly in an effort to clarify. We don't anticipate there'll be major changes. And that's what we're hoping for. I know the universities are also hoping that there's not going to be huge changes, but the new ones will align better to the new effective teaching standards. And we'll also have better examples of how those competencies can be measured.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
It looks like Tony says she's more concerned about the secondary methods, micro-credentials, since those aren't offered at Slick.
Yes, our content team are working on developing those. So in the newsletter, we list where those micro-credentials are in their development. Each content area is at a different place. Some of them have them ready live to go out. Some of them are in beta testing. Some of them are still being developed. So if you look on the licensing website, you can see which content area has their micro-credentials
Another
developed.
place you can look is in Midas. I'm always surprised at some of the ones that I see for content endorsements. Maybe aren't on the endorsement form yet. So you might look in Midas under the micro-credential tab. It lists every micro-credential alphabetically and by content area. So you might just check that out and see if it's possible the one you may be looking for has been created and the endorsement form just hasn't been updated on the website yet.
Assume that we'll have the time to implement new competencies and our educators will remain. Yes, the plan is that we'll have, there will be a grandfather clause that if any educators that currently have a professional learning plan, they will have the choice of staying on their current plan or switching to a new plan that addresses the new competencies. Yeah, Travis also says that if you have any questions about finding a methods course, you can reach out to the content specialist. They often have great ideas that aren't, we can do a better job of publishing that, but those kinds of things change all the time as well. So if you can just reach out to them and get the latest. Yes, thank you. Shonda says that required that USB needs to provide a means to be able to achieve it. That's very true. And as we're better defining competency and how to measure it, we're also finding ways that educators can kind of demonstrate their own competency. And we've got some guidelines on how that works. And so that if the content specialist isn't finding a course, there are other ways that they can demonstrate that competency without having to take a course. So if you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to us or the content specialist, and we can help with that. Any other questions about micro-credentials? Yes, Jason says that I'm just doing competency when it's not available. That's definitely an option. Rebecca asks, will CTE honor competency for methods? The short answer is yes. The question is, what does that competency look like? So if you have some questions, feel free to reach out. I know sometimes that CTE has, we've been working with CTE because, and with all of our, this is the challenge with translating to competencies is, saying that you have to take a course is not a competency. The competency is demonstrating the knowledge and skills needed in that particular area. And so, you know, that could be demonstrated through taking a course, or it could be demonstrated in other ways. And so what we're trying to help all of our staff do is understand what is a competency. And we're, you know, USBE defines those competencies and provides descriptions on how that competency can be met. But there could be multiple ways to demonstrate that competency. So that's something we're still working with. So if you have questions, feel free to reach out and we can help facilitate that process. See a couple of competence. Will districts accept micro-credentials used towards a lane change?
So Lisa, can I jump in here real quick?
Sure.
And I might be in the minority here, but I believe strongly that competency is determined by the principal and the APPEL team, the instructional coach, and that really the specialist at USBE, they're not coming and looking at the competency of that teacher. We're in there looking at that teacher. We're evaluating, we're doing the work. We're going to determine the competency of that teacher teaching the subject. And we've been given that right as an APPEL team to do that. And if we come back and get questioned in our audit by USBE, you're going to guaranteed to be here from my superintendents that represent Qs, that they're going to support me 100% in how we are determining competency of that teacher in the classroom.
Yes.
And I'll say that too when I get audited with what I've been doing with competency right now. I have been right in the room with you and Malia when you have looked at what we're doing and you've signed off on it. And if it comes back to bite me, you're going to see one mad as hell person right now. And the only reason I'm saying this is because the legislature is looking at throwing APPEL out. There's all of these things going on. We're in meetings fighting for APPEL because it's such a good program. But if we start trying to put all these micro things on what competency is, all we're going to do is shoot ourselves in the foot, because we have to have discretion on what competency is. I'll stop with my rant and I'll turn my thing off and shut up for the rest of the meeting.
I do want to bring up, though, that once someone is licensed, they can go to anywhere in the state. So if we don't all agree on some level of competency, then it kind of pushes out the meaningfulness of a license.
I hear you. I hear what you're saying. However, we see a lot of people who do have I see people who have a professional teaching license who are not as competent as people who are going through the APPEL program, who don't have the skills. And so it goes either way. You're always going to have people who are not as competent who have a professional license.
Oh, that's totally true.
Well, and we're also getting people who have completed an APPEL program and are wanting to move to another state. And the states contact us going, what is this program? And, you know, so the license that they earn through an APPEL program is a professional stage 2 license that is equivalent to another stage 2 license in another state. And so knowing how we define those competencies, how we're going to measure those competencies, and how we know that the teacher has met that competency are the 3 big things that we're still working to define. And that's going to be a huge part of our conference in March, and a huge part of those better defining those new competencies. As we've been going through trying to measure the competencies that we do have, we realize there's some gaps and some things that could have some better clarification. And so that's part of that process of, you know, what is a competency? How do you measure it? And how do you know that the teacher is meeting that competency? And as you guys have pointed out, if we can get a common understanding of all those things, then we're doing a great job. And we're not quite there yet, but we're getting close.
We always pregame our teachers too that come into our program and just say that, because we're not a university, right? Like we can get them a license and do everything that, you know, check all the boxes that we feel are appropriate and qualifies them here in the state of Utah. But if they were to go somewhere else, I mean, we just let them know ahead of time. I don't know what your that state's going to, I don't know their expectations, their requirements, those things, because I mean, we've had people come from out of state and it hasn't been, good enough for us. So they've had to like go and take extra courses. And so, I mean, that goes both ways, but I don't know, just to alleviate any of that, that's like we pregame them, this is what will help you do here. Just know that if you were to move out of state, I'm not promising you myself that it's going to just go straight across. I don't know. And I feel like that just covers bases in case. I hope it does, but you never know. So that's one of the things we make sure we tell them going in.
Yeah. And that's part of why we're pushing to get all of anything that we're using to demonstrate competency in our MIDAS system, because it tends to be something that is transferable, and we have, standards of what that looks like. And so, when Mariah asked, do districts accept micro-credentials to record a language change? And some districts do. I know I worked with Provo, who was using that for compensation for their teachers when they complete their micro-credentials. And it's up to the district, obviously, but that the hope is that we can create a system where we have standardized expectations so that it is something that can be transferred from district to district and throughout the state, and hopefully out of the state. I don't see any other questions in the chat about that, so I think we're going to move on to our legislative session. That's always a fun discussion topic. So I think most of you are aware of HB 215, which is funding for teacher salaries and optional educational opportunities. And this bill did pass both the House committee, the House floor, the Senate committee, and the Senate floor yesterday. It was on the second reading, so there will be a third reading today at 11 a.m. on the Senate floor. It passed both the House and the Senate with more than a 2/3 majority. So at this point, it's what we call veto proof, unless some representatives decide to change their vote if the governor decides to veto it. But assuming that it passes the third reading today, it's probably a done deal. So that's an interesting one. The biggest thing about that is that the educator salary adjustment, which is our November deadline, is going to go from $4,200 to $6,000, I believe. So that will be a big funding deadline for us here in this office and for you guys as well, making sure that our educators have their licenses so that they can get that funding. And I'm seeing, yes. So Sean is asking, does USB provide some kind of assurances for Apple educators who move out of the state that need to prove that their educator prep program is approved and recognized as such? Yes, in fact, I'm writing a letter right now for an individual who's moving to Colorado and from Granite and needs a letter stating that. So any questions? It is supposed to go up to 8,400. Yes, thank you. I thought 6,000 didn't sound right. It's 6,000 in addition to the 4, so that's 8,400. So that's quite a significant bump. So hopefully that'll be appreciative by teachers. And then there's also the scholarship program that's part of that I think a lot of us will be watching closely to see how that works.
Lisa, I was just gonna let you know that only 4,000 of that would be salary, and the other 2,000 or roughly $1,800 will be benefits. So it would be nice if all of that was, but I think that's a benefit. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, then we also have HB 190. This one is sponsored by Representative Ballard and somebody else, I can't remember. But this is called Local Education Agency Salary and Personnel Amendments. This will affect the TSSP program, the Grow Your Own program, and the 53G 7219 rule, which is the rule is basically salary schedules for medical specialists in the public schools. It would add school psychologists and school social workers to that code. Basically, it requires LEAs to have a separate salary schedule for these medical specialists, which now includes which would include school psychs and school social workers if the bill passes. It also adds school psychs and school social workers to the Grow Your Own program. And then it also reduces the number of years that educators need to qualify for TSSP from 10 years to 1 year. So they can qualify two ways. They can have a degree major in the field, or they can have 10 years of teaching experience. That would reduce the 10-year requirement down to 1 year, which essentially kind of says, well, you don't have to have a degree major in the field because you just have to be teaching in that area for a year. So this bill has had a reading in the House committee, but they haven't had a vote on it yet. So it's still got a little ways to go. But this is one that the board is going to be discussing at our board meeting this afternoon. And from what I understand, Representative Ballard will be at that meeting to help answer questions. So if you're interested in that, feel free to tune in at noon today to the board meeting. Any questions on that one? Okay, then we have, says you may have a separate salary schedule. You're not required to. Thank you, Travis. I was reading through it quickly because I wasn't aware of that part. So that is probably true. Got to watch those words. Okay, then the last one is this one we just discovered last night. This is HB 295. This is sponsored by Representative Thurston. This is called Educator License Amendments. And basically it creates a new license level called certified. And this is given to an educator who completes a certified educator training program. And basically that training program is that they've met all the competencies that the board shall establish, but does not require a bachelor's degree. So this is an interesting one. We haven't had any discussion with Representative Thurston on this yet. But basically it creates a pathway to teaching that does not require a bachelor's degree. We do have a couple of concerns because we know that there are federal rules that do not allow special educators in the supporting the support services to, they have to have a bachelor's degree, and that's in IDEA law. So if this passes, we wouldn't be able to offer this license for special ed. But we do offer a license for our CTE candidates who don't have a bachelor's degree. So this could possibly expand that to elementary, secondary, that sort of thing. Duke, that is a great question. Who provides the training? It doesn't specify that. I have a feeling that our university programs would not be interested, but we could certainly ask. So that may fall upon our APPEL programs to provide that training. That we haven't had a lot of discussions, so there's a lot of things that are up in the air. It does not have a second sponsor yet, so we haven't started the process yet. But we just wanted you to be aware that it is out there, and we're going to definitely keep an eye on this one. Any questions on that? Okay, so those are all the big ones that we're looking at. Does anybody have any other questions about the legislative session? Okay. I expected a little bit more, but maybe we're all just legislative sessioned out at this point. It's been a crazy year so far. It seems like it started earlier, and we're only in like the second week, so it's been crazy. Okay, then let's go to associate educator licensing renewals and extensions. Andrew, would you mind taking the lead on this one?
Yeah, you bet. I think we reviewed this at the last meeting too, but in case you missed it, or it's been a couple months, so we'll review it again. Associate educator licenses can be renewed coming up. Maybe as soon as February 1st. We're still working with USIMS, seeing if it's going to be an option to have them do that through USIMS or not. So that's kind of the holdup at the moment. But just as a reminder, in order to renew, you have to have taught for less than 3 years. Special education and service providers may not renew. They may extend, and we'll get to that in a minute. And then also, just as a reminder, an associate license attached to a professional license may not be renewed or extended. It's only if the license level for that candidate, the highest license level they have is an associate license. Lisa, you want to go to the next slide? So the requirements for the AEL renewal are pretty similar to the professional license as well. So again, they need less than 3 years of experience. So if I'm at year 2.5 right now, and I'll have 3 years by June, then we consider that to have 3 years of experience. So it's like 2 or less years is another way to think of it. You'll need to complete the 100 hours of renewal activities, same as a professional license, educator ethics, the cleared background check, student data privacy. This is all the same as a professional license. And then we have new AEL Canvas modules that we're hoping to get published soon, very soon. I think there may have been some questions in the chat. Let's see, Shonda said, can AEL educators count hours of teaching as renewal? I believe so. I believe they can count the COVID hours the same as a professional teacher can. Travis says, does less than 0.5. Travis, do you mean like a half-time teacher, or like if someone taught for only half of a year? Yeah. To be honest, Travis, I don't know. I'm not sure if someone does 3 years of part-time teaching. I think I don't know. Lisa, do you know that? I might have to ask Malia that.
I believe the business rules in Cactus are that if they are at least half-time, then it would be counted as a full year. So if they're teaching less than half-time, it would be considered less than a year, and they may not have 3 years of experience for that, but we can double check the minutia of that. Yeah, I don't believe that's changed, Travis. From what I understand, Kristen's conversation with our Cactus team is that they were going to use the same rule. So.
And then Brittany asked, how can we check to see if someone has completed the AEL modules? We actually don't give them credit in Midas just because it would create another step, because these will be the same modules that somebody who's new to licensing and Apple and associate licensing. So we didn't want to ask them to have to go through another step of like creating a Midas account and all of that. So the modules are not linked to Midas. If you needed to check to see if someone had completed them, and keep in mind, no one has completed them yet, just because we haven't posted them. But you can just email us. We get a lot of emails asking if people have completed the modules, and we can look that up really quickly. So that's probably going to be your fastest bet.
It looks like there's a question about why do the modules again. Right now it's written in board rule. I think the reasoning behind that is similar to the ethics review training that has to be done within a year. We're realizing that it seems redundant to do a training that they've already done, which is why we're working on updating the modules every year, but we haven't quite done that this year yet. So we're hoping to have that done in the next week or so. Oh, good. Nicole asked, can you give an example of when you would do a renewal and an extension? So let's actually go to extensions, and then that might help.
So if somebody is not eligible for a renewal, they should be eligible for an extension, except in some special education cases. But generally, the extension will be for anyone who has 3 or more years of teaching in Utah, and then it will be requested by the employer. So you will need to have an HR officer sign off on the renewal form, and these you can submit now. This is not going through USIMS. This is going to go through Qualtrics, and I think we have a link maybe on the next slide. I'm not sure. Okay, yeah, so when you need it, there's the link to renew or extend. But again, we don't have anything set up yet for renewal. Extension we do, so you can. Just keep in mind, somebody, it may be you or some HR officer is going to need to sign saying that, you know, your district or charter school is requesting the extension on behalf of the candidate. And then for special education and related services, so if they have 1 or 2 years of teaching, then they can also, or 0, then they can also have their license extended for 1 year. Or 0 years of teaching, they could still have it extended for 1 year as well. And the thing they have to do that's different from general licensing is that they have to have a document that says that they are making adequate progress toward the degree or license area. Just so we know that they are still actually working on it and not just having their license extended. Any questions on extensions or renewals or the difference between the two?
Yeah, I have a question. Okay, so I saw that the license, so the secondary license or the elementary license can be renewed.
Yep.
But not the endorsements?
No, the endorsements can be renewed as well. Yeah, so anything that's attached to the associate license level will be renewed.
Yeah, when they renew the license, we will renew the license area and the endorsements with that.
When it wouldn't renew, Kelly, is if somebody has a professional license, secondary license, and let's say they're teaching elementary on an elementary AEL. In that scenario, the elementary AEL would not renew because it's attached to a professional license. Same thing if they had like an associate history endorsement attached to a professional secondary license, that associate history endorsement would also not renew.
But
So-
the associate elementary is a license area. It's not an endorsement,
Mhm.
but
Yeah,
it won't
so
renew if they
it's
have
because
another
the license
professional license.
level it's attached to is a professional level.
Okay. But if somebody that didn't have a,
Not.
yeah,
Yeah,
I didn't think it was attached. It's not an endorsement.
So,
No.
so the professional, so the level of the license is professional, and then attached to that is a professional license area and an associate license area, all attached to a professional level license.
so why wouldn't the elementary license area be able to be renewed if they've only taught on it 1 year? Because someone may have gotten a license area AEL. I'll use the example Kelly brought up, the elementary. They didn't get a job the first year in elementary, maybe even the second year. When they finally did, they joined up with APPEL to do the elementary competencies and such. Why can that not be renewed if they've only been on it for 1 or 2 years?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Well, there's 2 challenges we're facing. One is that in the board rule, we're allowed to renew licenses, not license areas or endorsements. And if it's part of the license that we're renewing, then yes, we would do those endorsements. But then there's also the challenge of, in the board rule, it says it doesn't say if they have 3 years of experience within that license area. It just says 3 years of experience, period. So most educators who have a professional license have at least 3 years of experience. And if that's the case, they wouldn't be eligible to renew any associate part. So that there's some challenge to that. And I know that Malia can explain it better if she's here.
So then what it really boils down to is the solution is you have to put them on an LEA specific till they finish up their program.
Yes. And we do realize that we have half of our programs that have rules as far as participating in APPEL is that they have to have an associate license. And that's definitely something you can continue to do, but there may be a need for these individuals who started that way and didn't quite finish. And there may need to be some room for exceptions. And that's part of why we're bringing it up here, is so that you can think through those situations. I see a couple of comments in the chat. It's one of those 1% issues that come up when we're trying to avoid abuse. LEA specific is definitely a niche solution. Yeah. And that's an option for everybody but special ed. So
Another thing I wanted to bring up actually was a question that I sent out to Lisa and Andrew and Camilla earlier, but it might be helpful or it might be even more confusing. So we do have teachers in our district that have an associate educator license that are not in our APPEL program. They're not SPED, but they are doing their teacher training through an institution, whether it be the University of Utah, WGU, or what have you. So I asked about, we'll have a teacher that needs a 1-year extension because she won't be finishing until the fall, and who applies for and grants that extension. And it wasn't WGU who, and I think the teacher themselves applied for the AO. It wasn't through a program, but anyway, you had let me know that that would be our district, our HR, that would apply for that, even though she's not technically in our APPEL program, correct?
yes, that is correct. And I appreciate you bringing that up. In the board rule, it says that their license may be extended for 1 year if the employer requests that extension. And so the employer in this case would be your school district. And so on our educator license extension form, we ask for the educator's name and information. There's a little caveat here about special ed, which we'll talk about in just a second. But then we're also asking for the signature of the HR director or the charter director, whoever usually verifies employment, to sign this form. And then they will come to you for that signature. Well, if you're in HR, some of our APPEL directors are not in HR. So if you're not in HR, then you're off the hook. They do need to reach out to their HR director and get this signed. And then they will submit this form through Qualtrics, and we'll do our best to notify you when that's completed. It's not an automatic process. We were hoping to get this in USIMS where it could be automatic, but it's not developed yet. So for this year, at least, we're going to have to do these manually. Now for special ed, there's an additional caveat in board rule that says that they have to have verification that they're making adequate progress. So in this case, they will need to go to their program, their usually university or the APPEL special ed, and get a letter that says that they're making adequate academic progress and an estimated completion date. And they will attach that letter along with this form when they fill out their Qualtrics application. Because we cannot renew special ed licenses. If they have less than 3 years of experience, we can extend up to 3 years, but we cannot renew those licenses. I see another question in the chat. Can anyone get an extension without any rules, as we have been discussing with the high-level professional license? I don't think I understand the question.
So Amy, are you asking if somebody with a professional license and an associate whatever attached to an endorsement license area, is that what you're wondering, if that person can get an extension?
Yeah, if they can, yes, they can get an extension no matter where they are in their, if they have a professional level.
I believe we just asked this question and the answer was no. I mean, like a couple days ago, we asked in our team meeting and I believe the answer was no.
No,
Yeah.
what? That they can't?
No, they may not.
So if they already have a professional license, they cannot extend an associate license level or an associate endorsement. Because in the board rule, we're only allowed to extend licenses.
Okay, it wasn't just renew, it's also extend. Okay.
Yes. Those are all great questions. Any other questions? We realize this is a new process with some new rules, and there's probably going to be things out there that come up that we haven't quite worked through. So feel free to send those questions and we'll do our best to try and get you some answers.
So Lisa, would you scroll up in the chat and just respond to my question? This is Joby.
Question, sorry, Joe. I
So in
missed-
reality, is that one, Joe, there's no reason for an AEL educator to become professionally licensed?
Well, there is the 3-year limit, so they're not allowed to renew an associate license if they've worked for 3 or more years. And they can extend for 1 year, but that's only at the discretion of the employer. So the employer has to sign the form and submit it. So once they've got those 3 years, they won't be able to renew their license after that. So
I guess I apologize. There's something here that I guess I'm not understanding. So what is a renewal for?
the renewal is only for educators who have taught for less than 3 years. And that's the way it's stated in board rule, is if they have less than 3 years of experience, then they can renew their license for an additional 3 years. But once they get that 3 years, and this is experience in a public school, it doesn't matter what they're teaching, or a private school, as long as that assignment was recorded in Cactus, that counts towards those 3 years of experience. So it doesn't have to be within your LEA, it could be anywhere. And we do have educators that, move around from year to year, and all of that experience counts.
So if a teacher teaches for 2 years and then their AEL expires, they can apply for an additional 3 years. They can have 5 years of an AEL, but that's the absolute end. Unless, of course, they apply for an extension and then they get another year. And so now we're saying you can have an AEL for 6 years, but that's it, no more.
Yes, that would be worst case scenario.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lisa, also kind of imply if someone received their AEL but didn't receive a teaching position. So that first year they had it, but they just didn't get picked up at any district. So they didn't get that year of experience, but that was year 1 of their AEL. This would also be a reason why they don't get their 3 years, correct?
Yes, and Travis just dropped an example of that, because we Granite is one of those that won't even look at them unless they have an associate license. And so we do get a lot of people that apply to say, I'm trying to apply for this teaching job and I need to have a license. And so they'll get an AEL even though they have no teaching experience and they're not enrolled in a program. And they're hoping to get a job so they can enroll in a program. But that may take a year or two. And so they would be eligible to renew their associate license for another 3 years. And then I see a question from Amy. So if they cannot be renewed or extended, the only other option is to request another LEA specific. Yes, that is correct. Okay, I don't see any other hands or any other questions dropped in the chat. Okay, so I think we're ready to move on. We did have questions about where do you find these forms? The forms are on our educator license renewal page. So if you go to State Board of Education and click on educator licensing, and then there's a thing that says renew a license, and then you click on associate educator license. They're all right here. So the renewal form is here and the extension form is here. So you can direct people to there. We're hoping to have the associate license renewal available in USIMS by February 1st. I believe it's in beta testing right now. So we're keeping our fingers crossed that that'll work next week. But the extension will have to be through Qualtrics because that won't happen through USIMS. And I think that was actually our next slide. So any questions on that? I don't see any. So let's move to, do you want to do this one really fast, Andrew?
Yeah, you bet. So we have a new application software for, well, it's actually for all of licensing, but AEL is the first one to push it out. And this is live and running now. So all of the links on our associate educator license forms have been changed and the link on the website should be changed soon. So all the links now will go to what's called SurveyMonkey Apply. It's way different than Qualtrics in that how you apply is much different. This will allow us to process licenses way faster. So if you click on SurveyMonkey Apply or where it says register for an account, you can create an account. You'll basically put in your email and all that stuff, and then you'll complete what's called the eligibility, which asks like, do you have a USIMS account? What's your Cactus ID? Things like that. Shonda, that would be great if you want to create a dummy AEL application, name it something silly and or put your name in it or something, and I'll know that it's not one that we need to process. After you do the eligibility, then it'll say, here's what you're eligible to apply for. And it'll always say associate license. That one will always be an option. As long as you have created a USIMS account, then it'll allow you to apply for an associate license. It may have license equivalency review, which is the out-of-state process. And then also it may have endorsements. So anything that anyone is going to apply for, not renewals or extensions, but licenses, will all be run through this now. And I think eventually, although we don't have this yet, applicants will be able to link to like a school district. So you could go in and see like what messages we've been sending them or what they might be missing that way. We'll still be putting notes in the dossier, just like we do with Qualtrics. So when something's missing or when we receive something, there will be a note in Cactus in the dossier that says that we received that, so you can still follow that way. One of the differences though, and this is one thing that's going to speed the process of processing these up a lot, we will no longer be hand making the associate license documents, the PDFs that we send when someone's awarded an AEL. We'll send them an email and it'll say, you've been awarded a secondary license with a history endorsement. You may also view this license on the Utah license lookup, and we'll include a link to that. But we won't be hand making and saving the PDFs and then attaching it to an email. So that's part of what's going to make this process go a lot faster. But also just to be aware of that, some districts may look for that or require that, but we won't be creating those anymore. So
I have a question about that. So, and I know that a lot of times when they get their application back or approved, it comes with stipulations, or these are the things that you're missing, or this is what you're required to have. Is that going to be included? I mean, and if not, how can we get that information to make sure we're kind of aligning with the state, with what the state is telling them? The dossier doesn't always include that. It's like very brief, and just wondering.
Kelly, are you wondering like when somebody is awarded a license, or when the times when we say like you don't qualify because?
No, because like, for example, this happens with out of state a lot, I'm seeing. And so we had a teacher from out of state it was actually on his, it did say you need to complete, a PPA, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well, I did do that. And then we were able to respond to that. Or it might be, I have another teacher, you have a professional secondary license, your social studies, you still need these courses in the endorsement. You have an AL endorsement in social studies because you're missing these two things. Like, can we get that information as well? Do we need to ask from the candidate? And sometimes they get it and sometimes they don't. It seems to depend on subject area specialist, and even in CTE, some of them have that information. I've reached out to some CTE people to get it, but what's the easiest way to get that?
We can
go ahead, Lisa.
The process in the SM Apply is that there's basically an intake. So somebody, but it'd probably be our support staff that will look and make sure that all of the stuff that we need is complete. And then they'll send it off to the specialist. And when the specialist reviews it and sends it back to outtake, which is usually we can work with our staff to make sure that when we get it back from the specialist, that it's really clear what it is that they're missing. We would put the information in the SM Apply. And that's one of the reasons why we're transitioning to this system, is because of that transparency. from what I understand, if the applicant, they can select people they want to share their application with, and they could put in your email address. And so then you would be able to see all of those notes as well. And I think that was a question about creating an account is different than submitting an application. And yes, that is correct. So
would they be able to then go back in and add people? Because at the time of application, a lot, they don't know what district they're going to be with, or school or charter.
Mhm. Yes, from what I understand, that is correct, but I can double check. Andrew might know better.
I don't, I'm sorry.
Okay,
That's
we'll
a
check that.
great question.
If
Yeah,
I
because
might butt in, that is
Yo,
something,
Jennifer, yes, Jennifer's been building that out of state.
so
go
that
ahead.
is something that we do at the out of state, is we try to clarify when we can't give a professional license and we need to give them an associate license, we try to clarify exactly what they need still to get to that professional license. And in the new SM Applied, that should still be a part of the process. They'll still get that information of what they're missing.
Yeah, so we can definitely work on that communication, and that's what we're hoping, because in the dossier note in Cactus, we have limited, what do they call that? But there's only so much space. And so we can't always say everything that we need, but that's not the case in SM Apply. So we can definitely be better at that communication, and it will allow us to communicate better. And you can also see it. So we'll get that. One of the questions was, will it sync with USIMS? And the plan is yes. It'll probably still live in SM Apply, but there will be an API that can, basically what it would do is that once we say in SM Apply that the license has been approved, then it'll automatically send that message to USIMS where it will record the license. But that's a couple of years down the road. And that's another reason why we chose this program, is because it does have that API that has that ability to talk to USIMS. So that's the overall long-term plan. Any other questions about that?
Shonda, did you have a question about, so there's an account that we can sign up with, the application is separate from the account. Shonda, I'm not sure what you're asking.
So on the slide, it says steps for creating an account and applying. And then at the bottom, it says Apple directors may want to create an account to be familiar with the process. I just didn't know if that meant like Apple directors should have an account that would allow us to see our Apple people, or
It
if that's
wouldn't
the same
yet.
thing.
But I just so that if somebody comes to you with questions, or if you ever sit down to help them create the account, it's just much different from Qualtrics, where you do the eligibility and
So
then
the final bullet point to create an account is really like do the dummy process. Go through the
yes,
whole thing.
exactly.
Okay,
Yeah,
that
just
was
go
my
in and kind of play around, just so you're familiar with how it works. And yep.
Thank you.
Greg also says that you should be able to pull up any missing competencies in Cactus as well. We try to make a note about that for every applicant. So if a candidate moves schools, their HR should be able to view that, assuming they have access to Cactus, which I know some of you don't. So if you have questions, feel free to reach out. All right, we've got just a few more minutes left. And I know Jason kind of hinted at this about, what are the highs and lows of Apple? We'd like to get some feedback. Just be aware that this feedback may be shared with the board or with legislatures. So just keep it something that you would like to share publicly. Here is the link. Copy link address. And I think what we may do is I'll just put the link in the chat, and feel free to drop it in here. If you don't have the ability to type, I'm happy to type in here if we want to have a discussion about that. But if you just want to type your thoughts and then leave, that's fine as well. It is helpful to know who said it, in case we have questions. So if you want to just put your initials or your name there, I think that would be helpful. But if you want to do it anonymously, that's fine as well. but we've got a couple of questions. So what is working well in your Apple program? These are the questions that we are asking all of our Apple programs when we do the review, but we haven't done everybody's review yet. So we wanted to make sure that you have a chance to share. We need, oh no, okay, hold on just a minute, Jessica, I'll fix it. Anyone with the link can edit. Gotta love Google. Okay, hopefully refresh and you should be able to do that. So does anybody want to share out loud what's working well in your Apple program? I see lots of people typing, so maybe I'll just let you do it.
And Lisa, this is Jessica Bennington with Ogden. While people are typing it, I'll type this in too. I think something that is really working well with us for our Apple program is that we have the ability and the frequent discussion with our employees, so we can track them, we can help support them, and it's just a lot of that professional support and mentoring that I think is working so well to help ensure that they're getting licensed as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Appreciate you sharing that. Did you want to type that or would you like me to do it?
I can do it.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you sharing out loud.
Hello, this is Samuel Hussein for Esperanza Elementary. On behalf of Yvonne Medina, who is she's a maternity leave. She got a baby days ago, so I'm just popping in, learn about the program as a second vice principal in the school, and it's working. We're identifying people who has the ability but lack of the credentials, so it's working well. People are studying, people are preparing and getting involved, and that helps a lot to our professional service.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Appreciate that. Did you want to type that in or would you like me to, Homer?
I think you can do it for me because I don't have the link because I'm not. She gave me just the link for the. So now I go.
At
Okay,
Esperanza
perfect. Elementary.
Excellent. Okay, so
Thank you, Lisa.
helping educators get licensed. Anything else you'd like me to say?
Yeah, with the experience. So they have the experience, but they have the license because different circumstances. So yeah, they're preparing their. We have 3 that are studying, getting all the credentials necessary in order to get the license. Yeah, it's working. They're excited.
Awesome. Anybody else?
Lisa, I typed this, but I actually want to share it because a big part of my master's work was on teacher retention in those first 5 years and creating a really strong induction program. And that's one of the things that I think has worked the best with the APPEL program is it forces us to create a really solid induction program. So here we have these new teachers who get this really good one-on-one support. They get coaching, mentoring. They don't have to feel alone. They get their questions answered. All the things that I wish every new teacher coming out of university got, because I'm sorry, but a 4-month student teaching does not prepare you for the reality of your own classroom. And then we scratch our heads and wonder why teachers are leaving in the first 5 years. I have a feeling that with the amount of support that the APPEL teachers are getting, they're probably not going to be in that statistic of leaving. I think we will retain them. And a lot of it, I think, is what we're providing to the teachers through the APPEL program.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. You've actually hit right at my heart as well, is that retention piece. And I do believe that induction support is critical to that. So thank you for sharing that.
Hey, this is Scott. Dialing in you in. I can't type for some reason today, but one of the best parts about APPEL Right now, as it's been around long enough that people are getting used to the words that we're using. And that seems kind of rare with everything else that we're talking about these days. So that's a big plus.
So it's, we're getting used to it. And I do think, because we did start in the middle of COVID, and of course we had lots of other things to worry about. And I don't think anybody would have wanted to have started a new program like this in the middle of COVID. And so I think now that we've gotten over some of those COVID challenges, is it something that we do like that is working, that we appreciate, that we want to keep? We were in a program review yesterday, and you know, I know how much work you guys, it takes to run this program, and that's not part of a job that you thought you would have to do. And I just kind of asked them, I said, if you had the opportunity to continue in that capacity or move, say, alternate back to the state level, what would you prefer? And they said, you know, despite all of the challenges, we really do love that local control. We would like additional help, you know, kind of some kind of hybrid where we can get additional support from the state, but we still like being involved and supporting our educators that way. So that, I think that says a lot. Anything else that anybody wants to share about what's working well?
So I've got to leave, but I just want to give one on what USBE could do.
Yeah, let's do that.
I was really disappointed when I was in a meeting and I was told by the specialist at USBE that they were not going to do the micro credentials for their endorsement. And I'm not going to point out which one it is, but I don't know if I would have had that ability to say that in my job to my board, that I'm not going to do this because it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And I had multiple teachers that are working towards that endorsement that now I'm having to do some of the competency-based and some of the other things because of that decision. So if we're going to start a stinking program, then let's follow through and get the micro credentials ready by the time we were told they would be ready for our teachers to be able to do this work. And if we're not going to do that, then let's just get rid of APPEL and go back. Or let's actually come up with a simple way to do the competency-based performance measures. And then when a program is doing them and they're doing the best they can, they have the evidence, the lesson plans, the video evidence, those types of things. I think that there's a lot of things there that if they get written up in a program, that boy, that's a sad day. So, because we're all trying to do the best that we can.
Yeah.
So with that being said, you can type that in or throw it out, but
I think I am, just to remind me that we do need to address that issue.
I mean, that was devastating when a state specialist told me, oh, we're not doing the micro credentials anymore for this endorsement. So.
Thank you. Okay, I see people are still typing. Is there anything else that you would like to share? I love all of the looks like we're filling in both the things that were challenges and things that USBE can support. Anything else that you guys would like to share? I'm looking in the chat. I see some questions about the application that I think Andrew answered. Don't think I see anything else. I'm not seeing any hands. So I think what we'll do is we'll adjourn the meeting. We'll stick around for a few more minutes if you have additional questions that you'd like to ask. Otherwise, I think we're good. Thank you so much for coming. We will schedule our meeting for the 16th of February. If there's not enough agenda items, then we'll cancel it. But right now we'll schedule it for the 16th. And if you can attend, great. If not, we'll record it so that you can attend later. Thank you. You guys have a good day.
Thanks so much. It was a great experience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.